Rebecca, obviously, as well as being the chair of the UK Radon Association. I'm also one of the founders at propertECO. We're a national organisation dealing with radon testing and mitigation, and we've just celebrated our 10th anniversary. My talk today is about mitigation, about maintenance of mitigation systems, and why that's crucial, but an often forgotten piece of the puzzle. Slides on. So I wanted to start by asking, what's the point? What's the point of our symposium today? What's the point of creating new maps and updating them? What's the point of testing houses for radon? The ultimate goal is to carry out the mitigation and get people to carry out the mitigation. To do all of that involves a lot of effort, a lot of communication, raising awareness, making people aware, convincing them to do these actions. But what's the point? The end goal is not to create a map, not to get someone to do a test and get a report, a piece of paper. The end goal is to reduce the number of avoidable lung cancer cases due to radon. That's what we're all here for. That's what we're wanting to achieve. And that's not a quick fix. It's not like if someone's got a leak in their roof. And to fix that, you say, right, we're going to get a roof up, they're going to patch that, and then that will be fixed and that will hold good for the next 20, 30 years. No, we need to reduce long-term exposure to radon, and to ensure we're doing that, if we're installing a mitigation system, we need to ensure that that mitigation system is continuing to be effective constantly. It's not just an on-off, we've evacuated the radon. No, it needs to stay on. So just want to show a bit more about the steps, the effort that's gone to get to that stage. So this was from some research done by Professor David Heavey over in Ireland. He's a psychologist, and to get people to get to the stage of mitigating, he's concluded there are 17 steps that people have to go through. I won't read them all out, but they have to be aware, they have to understand the risk, they have to believe it's credible, they have to perceive that it is a risk to them, they then have to understand what they can do about it, where they can go to get that information, they then have to convince themselves they are going to act, they're going to act, they know how to act, and ultimately they do act, carry out the remediation, and then ideally they test to confirm that remediation has been effective. All of those steps, all of that effort involved just goes in the bin. It's completely wasted if that system, after 2 or 3 years, maybe even less, maybe longer, stops working for whatever reason. They might not as well bothered getting to that stage. We all know it's very difficult getting people to that stage in the first place. So let's not waste that effort. Let's make sure that the houses that have been mitigated stay mitigated. So what do we need to do that? Quickly, in case people aren't aware of the types of mitigation systems that we mainly use in the UK, we have radon Sumps systems, which is shown on the left there, and positive pressure, positive input ventilation systems shown on the right. They both need different amount of maintenance. Nothing is hugely expensive or huge amounts of maintenance that are needed, but it does need to be done. So starting with radon Sumps, the first thing that we suggest doing on a regular basis is checking if the fan is running. If the fan's not running, then your mitigation system might as well not be there, because it is not affording you any protection at all. If the fan's not running, what is the reason for the fan not running? Has it mechanically failed? Has it been accidentally switched off? Or has it been deliberately switched off? We're currently engaged in a maintenance programme, several maintenance programmes, some for employers, workplace, and some in the social housing sector. Unfortunately, more than 10% of the properties we've been to in the social housing sector, we found that the fans have been switched off. Fuses have been removed, and they're just not running. So unless we've been sent to by the housing provider to go and do the maintenance inspection, they wouldn't know that these systems had been switched off. It's important, they believe that they're there protecting their tenants. It's important that it's recorded if it has been switched off and that was the tenant's choice to switch it off, that they have a record of that. So obviously when we've got them all back up and running again, and worked out why. If there's faulty fans, they can be replaced. Second thing to check if the fan is running, is it noisy? It could be noisy if the bearings are wearing down, if it's an old fan. It could be noisy if it's not sucking enough air, if something's happened in the sump, it's collapsed and it's not drawing enough air through there. Or one of the most common reasons we find in the UK, if we're called out for noisy fans, it could be something has crawled into the fan and is spinning around in there. The thing that we get most often is snails and snail shells. Fortunately, that's quite a quick fix. Switch the fan off, make sure all the bits fall out and put it back on, and then the fan is fine. I know we're approaching lunchtime, or some people might have been able to go and grab a sandwich while we're talking, so I won't leave this next photo up for too long, but if anyone can spot this was a fan, this is actually a picture that I've taken from an American mitigators website. Slightly more problematic than a snail in there. This was a dead squirrel that had found its way in the fan, completely blocked the fan, and that wasn't discovered until maintenance was carried out there. Hopefully we don't get too much of that in the UK, but that leads me on to my next point. Is there a cowl on the pipework? We always recommend putting a mushroom cowl or some sort of vent on the top to prevent leaves predominantly, but also rodents and other animals from entering the pipework. Importantly, is there a condensation trap on the pipework? Soil gas has high humidity levels, that then, as we have most of our fans and systems for sumps installed on the outside of the buildings, that then can cause it in the winter months particularly, high levels of condensation forming within the pipework, which if you don't have the condensation trap will trickle back down through the fans. The fans that we use are water hardened motors. They can accept a certain amount of water passing through there, but it's always best to avoid that if possible. So to prolong the life of your fan, we do recommend having a condensation trap installed. And finally, it seems an obvious one, but is the pipework complete? Are there sections of pipework that are missing, either beneath the fan, so you're not sucking the radon that you think you are, drawing it out from the sump beneath, or sometimes worryingly above the fan, so you're drawing out highly concentrated amounts of radon, and instead of venting it safely away from any opening doors or windows, usually above the roof line, are you actually venting it right beneath beside someone's front door or on their patio where they're sitting if that pipework has been damaged? So all important things to check on the sumps. A couple of pictures of systems we've been asked to go and inspect, and this is what we've turned up and found. This one clearly is not giving the homeowner any protection whatsoever. Most of the system is lying on the floor in pieces, long since broken. But as far as this was a housing association, as far as the housing association was aware, this was a house that had been mitigated. Another one, this one came from a school where they'd had radon protection installed many years ago. They'd subsequently done some testing and found that their levels had gone back up. Why? We've got major mitigation systems installed. Well, when our engineers visited and we took the systems down, this is what they looked like. Those fans have not run in a very long time. They weren't looked after, they weren't inspected. Moving on to positive inputs, ventilation systems, slightly different maintenance requirements on them, but again, is the fan running? Has it been switched off, or has it mechanically stopped running? Important thing, is it on an appropriate setting? Most of them have speed controllers on them. Some of them it just has a trickle mode. They do need to be set appropriately so they are providing the right amount of pressurization and dilution, but primarily they work on the pressurization principle for the size property or area of property that they are dealing with. Also ensure that if it's got a heater mode, the heating mode has been set correctly. We've had people turn them off because they've said they've been installed by someone else. They may have been set and someone's put the heater on and they've said, my electricity bills have rocketed, I can't afford to keep running it. Well, that's because it's been constantly heating the air to a temperature that it didn't need. So make sure they're set correctly. Is the ducting connected correctly? Again, we've had systems where they haven't been vented properly to outside, either the inlet or the outlet hasn't been connected, so you're not getting that input of fresh air and output of the filtered higher rate of air to pressurize the building. Is the intake vent clear? you're drawing air, it does go through a filter, but you need to make sure that you're drawing a sufficient amount of air, and what you're drawing hopefully is relatively clean and not going to cause more problems in the property. So whenever doing maintenance inspection, we always try and source the external vent and clean it if it looks like this. The main issue though that we see with PIV systems is the filters. These systems are often fitted and then they're forgotten about. And we go back to properties and we see a filter look like this. That is not what the filter on a PIV system is meant to look like. Again, sorry if I'm putting people off their lunch. This is what it's meant to look like with a new filter, white. These are meant to be changed probably every year, at least every 2 years, depending where you're drawing the air from. Is it from outside on a street level where there's a lot of traffic fumes? Are you in the countryside? Probably don't need to change it quite so often. But when the problem with this is when the filter is blocked to the extent it is on the left there, you are getting very little or much reduced airflow coming through. So you're not having that pressurization effect that you would have had when the system was first installed. And again, this is a slightly different unit, a high capacity one, but you can see the filters on there, what they're meant to look like and what we've turned up and found them looking like in many instances. Arguably though, the most important thing you can do when you do a maintenance inspection is to do a repeat radon test. Even if the system is mechanically functioning as it was when it was installed, with no defects, that's not what you're trying to ascertain. You're trying to ascertain whether the building has sufficiently low radon levels. Is the building being protected? Are the building occupants being protected? And the only way to do that is to carry out a test. So having a maintenance contract with a client is a great way of ensuring that they do regular repeat testing, either through passive testing, or now we have more clients as well who purchase the continuous digital monitors. We have a few different ones that we use, which all have different capabilities and different price points. The ones that give you remote access and a graphical output are particularly useful for clients to be able to see if a system has stopped working, either mechanically or because something has changed underground. Somewhere half a mile down the road, someone might have re-landscaped something and it's changed the pathways that we can't see. We don't know what that's doing to the radon pathways beneath your particular building. If you've got a continuous monitor that's giving you a graphical output, and some of them can even, you can set alerts on them, so it will alarm you if the level exceeds a certain threshold that you've set. That will then alert you that your system that you think is up and running and protecting you from radon might not necessarily be anymore. So they're a really important part of the whole full picture of radon protection nowadays. So just to finish off, I'm trying to catch up a little bit of time. This image, I think we could all relate to this in the radon industry. Sometimes it does feel like this. We are pushing the weight of the world uphill to try and get people to take account of radon, to know of radon, to then take action when they've found out about it. If we manage to get that to the top of the hill, don't let this happen. Don't waste all that effort and just see it roll back down again, back to the starting point of someone sitting in a property with high levels of radon. That's not what we want. We want to reduce radon levels and we want to keep them reduced. So I'm aware that was a quick run through, but I am trying to catch up on time. So I'm just going to have a quick look to see whether we've got any questions come in while I've been talking. So I've got a couple here that I will answer before we move on to the next speaker. So someone's asked, when mitigation measures are installed, should there be an annual radon survey of the building to check the mitigation is effective? Yes, we advise clients, and I'm speaking as propertECO here, we advise clients if they've had a mitigation system installed that they should carry out repeat testing and have a maintenance inspection at least once every 2 years, preferably test every year. In the workplace, certainly, we recommend that that should be done every year to ensure that the employer's risk assessment is kept up to date. You need to measure that risk if you've had to install an engineered system that you are relying on to protect your staff from exposure. You need to make sure that system's doing what you think it is. So that answers that. And I think, yeah, the next question I've got is, how often should you check the integrity of radon mitigation devices? Again, we would suggest having a maintenance inspection at least once every other year. Every year, of course, as Dave from Radon Away was talking about earlier, there are various alarming monitoring systems that you can now purchase or install on clients' systems that will alert them if mechanically it stops functioning. They do come with a bit of a caveat. We have to explain sometimes in the workplace when they're installed, it's not like a carbon monoxide alarm. If it goes off, it doesn't mean you've got high levels of radon, everyone needs to evacuate. It means that your system mechanically may not be working properly, so that needs investigating. So if you do go down the route of installing alarm systems, make sure that everyone understands what the alarm is telling them if it goes off.